Hello and welcome to the American Council on Exercise live webinar continuing education series. My name is Jackie Crockford and I will be your host for today's live presentation. Thank you so much for joining us. You are watching today for free on YouTube, so thank you so much. Make sure you use the chat bar on your YouTube viewer if you have any questions during today's live presentation. You can chat in a question for our presenter, and you can also chat in if you're having any technical difficulties. I'll be monitoring those throughout today's presentation. If you would like CECs for today's live webinar, remember you're watching today for free, but if you would like to purchase those CECs, go to the link provided on your screen, acefitness/past webinars, and you will be able to purchase a recorded version of today's presentation. You will receive a quiz within your MyAce account, and after you pass that quiz, you will receive 0.1 CECs within your MyAce account. Thank you again for joining us, and let's get started. Welcome to your continuing education course, Active Aging, your guide to training a booming population. My name is Jackie Crockford, and I will be your host today. We have the pleasure, the presenter for us today is Erika Quest. I'm going to ask Erika to come on out. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You have been a friend of ACE for a very long time.
Very long time, at least 10 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
So today you're going to be talking about training the active agers.
I am.
And this is a population that you train currently in your business, correct?
Absolutely, for sure.
So tell us a little bit about why this population is so important for our pros to be thinking about.
Well, the 50 plus is who we're going to be talking about. Super important population because it's a growing population, and also from the short level, these are the people that value their health, have the time, and also the money to spend on us as their personal trainers.
Right, so a lot of great information today, and we have a very special guest joining us.
Yes.
Who is our guest?
Momentarily, I will be bringing out my 81-year young dad to do a lot of the protocol and the exercises and the games we'll be talking about.
Great, so we look forward to that. I'm gonna turn it over to you. Let's get started.
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Ace, for having me. And hi, everyone. I want to all over the world. So thank you very much for having me. The American Council on Exercise brings you very, very valuable information, one of which is this active aging course. So as Jackie mentioned, my name is Erika Quest. For those of you who don't know me, I'm based here in Southern California. I've owned my functional fitness and Pilates studio for the last 13 years in beautiful Laguna Beach, California, and I'm honored to be here on behalf of the American Council on Exercise to talk to you about my passion and a passionate population of active agers. My background is Pilates and functional fitness. I am an ACE certified instructor, also Pilates Method Alliance. I am a BOSU Elite and Headstrom Elite team member and a master instructor for Balanced Body. I have the great joy of traveling internationally and teaching all over the world, and I have the great joy of being with you here today. So I hope you enjoy this information, and let's get started. So take a look up at the slide. We're going to talk a little bit about some learning objectives, which I'll have you for the next hour, and we will cover all of these learning objectives. So let's have a look at those 4 bullet points. One of the most important ones is to start to understand the 5 types of aging and which ones can be improved upon. I'll go through that in detail in the coming slides, so just know that. We also want to discuss special considerations for the 50 plus or the active aging population, what those look like and how to work with them. Now, I say that because I don't want you to feel fearful. These are just ideas, guidelines, and recommendations so that as you are dealing with a 50 plus population, you know where to go with them and you know what protocol and what strategies to take a look at and how to program that into your facility or your training scenario. We want to also address specific floor-based intake actions. And what I mean by that is when you bring on a new client in a one-on-one, two-on-one, small group training, or maybe even in a group setting, what to look at as far as when you are maybe assessing and aligning that person and or reassessing and aligning that person and seeing and checking in on what their progress will be. As Jackie mentioned, I have my fantastic 81-year young dad with me here. He will be demonstrating those intake actions, and he will also be doing what we will be talking about as far as implementing basic protocols, neuroplasticity strategies, and reaction time and fall prevention strategies for the 50 plus. Now, neuroplasticity. Big buzzword in the 50 plus population. And we're going to talk about the 50 plus in just a moment and what we're dealing with. But neuroplasticity is basically brain training. Now, oftentimes people think that they can sit down on the couch and do their crossword puzzles, much like my 93-year-old grandfather used to do. And that's great. But neuroplasticity, the definition and the true definition is movement along with brain games. And so I'm going to have you do a strategy with neuroplasticity with me right now. Now, I know that many of you might not all be at home in the comforts of your own home, but just have a little fun with me. Even if you're seated in a chair and you can't get up right now, just do this from your chair. But those of you who are willing and want to, please stand up for me. Now, I mentioned that neuroplasticity is movement along with brain games. So all I want you to do, you don't need to do a backflip, you don't need to do a burpee, you don't need to do a push-up, is just start a simple marching pattern. And as you're marching here in place, I'm going to challenge your brain a little bit. So the first 3 digits of my cell phone number are 949. Please say out loud the first 3 digits of my cell phone number. And the second 3 digits of my cell phone number are 842. Please say out loud the second 3 digits of my cell phone number. And the final 4 digits of my cell phone number are 9400. Please say out loud the final 4 digits of my cell phone number. And hopefully you got all of that right, and I'd like for you to repeat my entire cell phone number while you're marching in totality. So think about it and say it out loud. And I'm going to assume that you all got it right, so congratulations, great job. And that is a simple example of how to do neuroplasticity, movement along with brain games. And guess what? You really did just memorize my cell phone number. So if I start getting calls, well, I'm going to know it's from you. And in fact, one of my jokes, which is really not a joke, is that all of my clients in my facility have memorized my cell phone number, and I'm probably the one that's going to get a call in an emergency these days. So we'll be talking about some of those protocols in just a moment with my dad when I bring him out, but let's talk about who these active agers are. We are talking about 50 plus, and I know that that sounds quite young, and it is, and I'm going to explain to you the 3 buckets of people that we're talking about in just a moment. This is a heterogeneous population, and what I mean by that is that no 2 people are the same. So what I like to say is that everyone is a snowflake, right? I don't know what everyone's injuries or pathologies are. I don't know if there's joint replacements. Anyways, there could be compensatory patterns and issues at any time in any person, and those are things that you will be having to address. So it's a heterogeneous population. And the types of exercisers in the 50 plus population are up there on the screen for you. So we're looking at 3 buckets of people. We're looking at a dependent exerciser. We're looking at an elite exerciser. Those are the 2 sides of the spectrum. And then in the middle, we have our independent exerciser. Now, let's talk about the dependent exerciser and the definition of a dependent exerciser. A dependent exerciser is somebody who cannot get up and perform all of their activities of daily life without assistance. So their ADLs, or their activities of daily life, they may need some help from someone, whether that be cooking or driving or getting up and getting down off the floor. That's the definition of a dependent exerciser. On the other end of the spectrum, we also have the elite level exerciser. This is somebody who is still performing at a high level at any age. As an example, I believe there's a nun that's well into her high 70s, low 80s that is still competing out in the Colorado area in Ironmans. That would be somebody who is an example of an elite level active ager. So the population that we want to focus on today, as far as our audience is concerned, is the independent exerciser. So the definition of an independent exerciser is somebody who can simply get up every single day of their life and perform their ADLs or their activities of daily life without assistance. So they can cook a meal for themselves, they can get down on the floor and change their hose behind their dryer, they can bend down and pick their grandchild up off the floor, they can go to an exercise class, they can drive their car. All of these activities of daily life are functional for them and they're doing them hopefully very well. Okay, so we're moving on to the science of aging. Now, one thing I'd like to mention is that there's a lot of research based not only in this course, but many of the courses that I have taken that are referenced in this webinar. So just know that all of the research that I am actually referencing to is only about 10 to 15 years old, which is fantastic. There's a lot of recent research coming out on the active aging population, which is a wonderful thing. And I want to talk about senescence. Now, when I first learned this word, I thought it was the word sentence spelled wrong. I thought I was a kindergartner trying to pronounce the word sentence. But in fact, senescence is referencing the science of aging, and it's the condition or the process that we're looking at of the deterioration of our age. Now, I don't like that term deterioration, so I'd like to move us on to the 5 types of aging, because 4 out of 5 of those we can improve upon, whether that be within ourselves or whether that be within our clients or our classes. So there are 5 types of aging. Take a look at your screen. They're listed up for you there, and we're going to go through them right now. Number 1 is your chronological age. So this is the number of years that you and or your clients are at that time. I'm going to reveal something here. I'm 43 years old. I will never be 42 years ever again. Darn it. So there is your 1 type of aging that cannot be changed, and it's listed right there at the top for you. That's a pretty simple one. So let's move on to number 2. We also have a functional age. Your functional age is the definition of how well you or your clients are performing their activities of daily life, right? So I talked about the independent exerciser. Maybe they struggle with getting down and getting up a little bit, and that's an area that you want to improve upon. Well, when you apply some of these strategies from an intake as well as an exercise or game perspective, and you improve their getting up and their getting down, guess what? You've also improved their functional age, so congratulations. Moving on to biological age. This one gets a little bit more complex because it involves typically a medical community or a medical person. So if I were to take your blood or your client's blood or my client's blood and I looked at it under a microscope from a cellular level, we might notice that maybe my client is 65 chronologically, but they're 59 biologically because they look younger in biological years. But unfortunately, that can also go the opposite direction as well. They may have type 2 diabetes. They may have something historically or genetically that's going on with them that could actually also make them look older biologically. But as I mentioned, 4 out of 5 of these ages can be improved upon, and I'd like to talk about a good friend of mine, Bernadette O'Brien, who's 86 years young, who has improved on her biological age. I have the great joy of teaching with Bernadette on the road as well as many of my colleagues, and she is an example of someone who did have type 2 diabetes, and through diet, exercise, and these active aging protocols and strategies was able to reduce the fat around her pancreas and therefore reversed her type 2 diabetes. That is a fantastic example of improving biological age. So, number 4. Psychological age. This is basically the cognitive performance. Cognitive performance can get skewed and slow down as we age, and in addition, it can be impacted depending on what's happened to somebody. So this is where neuroplasticity starts to really come into play. We did this strategy a little bit earlier with my phone number. Now, that would be the numbers side of the brain, and I'm going to tell you a story right now about neuroplasticity and psychological age. My client, in fact, in my facility, I have 3 traumatic brain injury clients. One of my clients, Dan Daniels, who came into me, and he actually had gotten bucked off of a horse and was in a halo for 7 weeks and could not pass the memory portion of his life insurance exam. He's a retired CPA, so he's a numbers guy, so he did really, really well at memorizing my phone number. But he did not do very well at the letter side of his brain. So I would typically tell him a story, maybe about me going to the market and buying green Granny Smith apples, and I'd have him try and spell the word green. And that was an area where he had to work longer and harder to try and improve on that side of his brain. But in fact, he did do it, and he was able to pass that side of his exam, which shows us that from a psychological perspective, he was reintroducing and opening up new neural pathways because he was applying what? Movement with a brain game, and that again is neuroplasticity. So his cognitive performance improved and got better. Finally, we have our social age. Although this one is oftentimes looked over, this is a very important and critical age for our active aging population. Sometimes when our active agers retire, they decide that it's a good idea to sit down in front of the television and catch up on all those shows that they haven't watched the whole entire time that they've been working. Well, this really impacts their social age. They're not getting out nearly as much as they used to. They're not interacting with others. And us as an active ager trainer or somebody who teaches an active aging population can improve upon that social age by getting them to engage in classes, whether that be through partnering work or other types of examples, and or just interacting with one another. If they're excited to come to your class, that means you're making an impact on their self-efficacy and their social age, which is super, super great. So those are the 5 types of aging. As a reminder, I'll be a broken record. There's only one that we cannot change, and that's your chronological age. All right, so as I mentioned before, this is not to make you feel scared or any of that nature. It's just for you to be aware of what's happening in this population. So we're dealing with some common issues, and they're listed up there on the screen. We have musculoskeletal issues. Oftentimes your clients are going to have arthritis, maybe a little bit of osteopenia, osteoporosis, or osteoarthritis. So those are things that you're going to have to work with and use the protocol I'm going to be giving you to help them with that. And there are recommendations as far as that is concerned as well. Just know that those are things that are going to impact how things move in their body. Maybe their knees won't flex as much because they have some osteoarthritis. Maybe their toes are a little bit stiffer. That's completely fine. Don't judge it. Just know that's something you might see. And it's going to vary from person to person because we are dealing with, yet again, a heterogeneous group of people. You're also going to have some neurologic issues starting to come in. Those can involve maybe being diagnosed with a little bit of dementia, maybe even further along in Alzheimer's, maybe some Parkinson's, or even times a stroke or mini strokes have happened with this population. So just know that and be aware of that. And with neurologic issues, I have those in my facility and they thrive. They do really, really well. And in fact, they really enjoy the routine of being able to come in on a very regular basis into my facility and train. So you'll also be seeing visual issues. So visual issues, examples of that would be macular degeneration, a little bit longer or on the more severe side of things. Cataracts, something that I have dealt with from pre and post. In fact, my mom just had cataract surgery, so you'll be dealing with people that have had one eye done and not the other, and they're waiting to get the other eye done. This all impacts their visual affect and their visual field. So maybe sometimes when you're doing a visual affect drill, you're going to see different things happening, and or you might not need to do a visual affect drill because they already have some impairment on their eyes. Cardiovascular, this is a big one, right? High and low blood pressure, heart disease in the active aging population. Can you improve upon it? Can you help with it? Probably so, but just notice it'll be something that you're dealing with. And you'll see in the specific recommendations that there are amounts of time and or recommendations of getting up and getting down strategies so that you're not impacting and or you're accommodating for the cardiovascular issues that that client and or that class may have. And finally, on this slide, we have hormonal issues. So unfortunately, our metabolism starts to slow as we age, darn it. And thyroid issues can come into play here. You may have somebody who has either type 1 or type 2 diabetes and or menopause. So just know all of those are gonna come into play when you're training with people. Just be cognizant of them and know it's gonna make an impact, and it's definitely different than when you're training a younger person. General considerations, and again, these aren't designed to put you in fear by any stretch of the imagination. It's all about awareness and no judgment. Rotation is really, really key, really for anybody. But when we're talking about active agers, the recommendation is slower spinal rotation. And you may have heard some of these general considerations in the past, but I'm going to reiterate for those of you who may have already heard them. And I'm going to tell you a story because it makes sense. If I'm driving on Pacific Coast Highway and I have somebody in front of me and off to the side and I might be sitting in their blind spot, you better believe that I want them to be able to rotate and look and see where my car is at any age, really, but it's really important for our active agers that are still driving and in the independent exerciser category. The recommendation here is just try and keep it a little bit slower, so instead of quick, fast motion, so that the fluid in the vestibular system has time to accommodate that. Less than 2 consecutive minutes on the knees. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, but Erika, that's really not that much time. And I get that. And I know that. And I know that that's true for my clients. But here's the deal. When you're doing kneeling protocol, you're going to run into people that have had partial and full knee replacements, maybe have some pretty severe osteoarthritis in their knees that you might be needing to pad up, and that's all well and fine. But do me a favor and do them a favor. Make sure that you're always checking in with them, number one, and number two, take them off of their knees after about 2 minutes, go to a different body position, and then if you have kneeling work planned at another time during the session, that's completely fine as long as it's amiable to them and or their client and or your class setting. General considerations, just giving them to you. Also, you want to avoid strictly supine work or lying on your back and unsupported cervical flexion or extension work, right? So when you see my dad in a moment, you're going to notice that I'm going to have a bolster behind his neck. I know him, I know his body, and I know that he's had some damage from being a firefighter. All his life, he's a retired firefighter, right? Retired fire captain. And so I know that he has some damages in his neck. And if he doesn't have a bolster behind his head, he's gonna get some numbness and some tingling throughout his fingertips and through his arms. So that's a recommendation, and make sure that you take a look at your client and or your class if you have them on their back or on their belly when they're working through some of these protocols and or the protocols that you're giving them in your facility. For those of you who teach to music, which I do, and I'm guilty as charged sometimes by having my music a little bit too loud, the recommendation is to have a lower decibel level for this population. So you can see it recommended up there on the screen. We're looking at less than 60 decibels, if at all possible. It's actually not good for anyone's ears to be that high. And like I said, I'm being honest here, I'm guilty too, especially in a conference setting where I want my music to be louder than the room next door of the person who is teaching. So just be mindful of that if you are a group fitness instructor and you want to teach or add music into your facility. I want to pay a little homage to the references that I have below on the bottom of the slide. There's a lot more research and many more bibliography references within the confines of all of these, but I have also gone through every single one of these certifications and or referenced these institutes. So that's the BOSU Level 1 Mobility and Stability Certification designed by Lawrence Biscontini through Headstrong Fitness. I also have references in here from the very wonderful American Council on Exercise, the Functional Aging Institute, as well as our governing body, the ICAA, the International Council on Active Aging. If you don't know any of those resources, I would very much encourage you to look them up. They have a lot more value add than even I'm able to deliver to you in this course in the confines of 1 hour. We're almost done with general considerations, and then I promise you, you're going to get to meet my dad. So, final 4 things here that I want to talk about are up on the screen. Hydration. This population is oftentimes dehydrated, and the rationale behind that is that sometimes there's not a restroom nearby, and or they can't hold it for the entire time that you're training them and or during your class, or they think that they need to. So just know that going in, and one of the simple strategies that I use in my facility, I like to say that I drink with my clients, and it's not what you think that I'm saying. Oftentimes when we need to take a break from something, we go over to the water cooler together and we both take a drink of water, so that way I know that they're hydrating throughout their session. Simple tip trick that you can apply to your facility or to your class structure. Sleep and balance. The general recommendation for sleep is 7 hours a night. Wouldn't that be great if we all got that every single night? I'm actually a really good sleeper, so knock on wood, I hopefully stay that way into my active aging years, but a lot of people are not. So here's the thing. When we say 7 hours, it does not need to be consecutive from start to finish. So it doesn't need to be overnight. So if your clients are sleeping 5 or 6 hours in a night, maybe encourage them to get an extra nap in or rest in the middle of the day as they can find the time. This will kind of get them to the amount of sleep that they're needing. Lack of sleep can really impact a lot of things, specifically balance. And balance becomes critical as we age because that really supports good fall prevention and reaction time, which is what it's all about to be a healthy active ager. In case you didn't know, balance begins to decline at the age of 30. And if you don't train it in multiple body positions, then you're going to continue to lose it. And I'm going to be a broken record, but I want to talk about those multiple body positions right now. We're talking about 6 body positions. That's standing, sitting, side lying, kneeling, supine, meaning lying on your back, and prone, meaning lying on your belly. All 6 of those body positions are really important to train in so that you're not just doing standing protocol all the time. Now, do you need to do all 6 in every single one of your sessions? Absolutely not. But if you can choose a few of them, or one or more than 1 and 2 or 3, that would be wonderful. Moving on to clothing. If you teach in a group class setting, the recommendation is the brighter the better. So I didn't do the greatest of job for this course because I'm in gray and navy right now, but if you are in a group class setting, not only does brighter clothing make it more energetic and fun, but it also helps those with macular issues see you better. So the good news is that the trend right now is that bright clothing is in. So if you've got a lot of bright clothing and you want to really promote that self-efficacy, having a great time, that social age, and people being able to see you better, put on your bright clothing for that particular class. Finally, we're not doing a full class here, but the recommendation as far as a warm-up is concerned is that you take at least 20% of your session and consider that your warm-up. The reason why is you want to get your clients and your classes warm all the way out to the distal joints. Now, of course, you're going to want to do it in all 3 planes of motion as you're used to and all of the standard protocol. But take a little bit more time with this population because that helps them really get warm from top to bottom, from fingertips to toes, and then proceed on with some of your exercises and games. All right, so this moves us into our floor-based intake actions. What I mean by floor-based intake actions is when you're seeing a new client, or maybe when you're reevaluating a client that's been with you for a period of time, or they've never done some of these intake actions, you want to check in on these very simple protocols and see what's happening. And these are all research-based driven. I'm going to talk through this slide and then guess what time it is. It's time for me to introduce my dad. The first body position that I want to talk about as far as, or excuse me, not the first body position, but the first thing I want to talk about as far as intake actions is what's happening at the ankle joints, right? So we want to start to look at the ability for your client or your class to dorsiflex the feet or pull the toes towards the knees. That's dorsiflexion of the feet. Let me talk specifically about the why behind the what here. If you didn't know, the front of the shin or the tibialis anterior, those muscles are what dorsiflex the ankle joint. The ankle joint in dorsiflexion is critical for fall prevention and reaction time. Just think about what you do in daily life. Walking, maybe running, climbing up and down stairs, getting over a curb, getting out of your car. All of those involve dorsiflexion of the foot in some capacity. I tell one of my clients when he walks into my studio or my fitness facility, I don't want to hear you walking, because if I hear him walking, oftentimes I'm going to hear him shuffling and not using the dorsiflexors of his ankle or the front of his shins. So we're going to go through a standing position with some heel to toe taps and standing calf raises if you were on an elevated surface. We're going to do a supine position with toes to knees, dorsiflexing there. Then we're going to talk about a quadruped toe tuck so you can see what's happening at the metatarsal level and how well your clients or your class can tuck their toes. And again, these are great intake actions to start with, and you don't need to do all of them. You could just choose one so that you don't waste time if this is a first session. Without further ado, I would like to welcome my dad, Bob. So come on in, Dad. Hi. So this is my dad, Bob. I mentioned to you he's 81 years young. I'm a very proud daughter of his, and I can definitely say that he is 6'2" tall, and he's not getting any shorter because he has rules in his household to be supported by his daughter to live independently for the rest of his life. And that is to do his active aging protocol at least 2 times a week, to walk every day, and to play golf 4 times a day. And because he's a retired firefighter, I would like to also say that he's still in functionally incredible shape, and you will likely see that in everything that he's about to do. So let's begin with the first intake action, which is your standing piece, Dad. So go ahead and stand with your feet a little wider than hip distance apart, and all I want you to do is stick one foot out in front of you. Yeah, and this first one, Dad, is just lower your foot to the floor and then bring the toes back towards the knees. Yeah, so from here you can see the simple action of him dorsiflexing his foot here. He's in shoes. If you train in a barefoot environment, it's fine to do this barefoot as well. But as an instructor, all you're looking at here is how well that ankle joint is flexing. Switch sides, Dad, because of course we have 2 sides, so you don't want to be uneven. I wish I could get to both sides in this webinar. We won't be able to do both sides in everything here that we do. But this is just a simple way in a standing position where you can see, now he's pretty even from side to side, which is great, but you may have had a client with an old sprained ankle. Maybe you had somebody who's an ex-football player. Who knows what their performance strategies were back in the day, and they may not be even from side to side. It's a really great way to take a look at dorsiflexion. Another example of this in your facility, how to do this, would be if you had a stair in your facility, you could have them lower the heels off the stair and rise back up onto your toes. We're going to put my dad down onto the floor in a supine position. So I'm going to grab this mat and we'll put this about center. Thanks, Dad. And as I mentioned before, we're going to use a bolster for the back of my dad's neck. So you would use the tool that would work best for you. And we're going to begin on your back. So supine, Dad, he's going to use the strategy that works best for him to get up and get down. And if you're really lucky, he's going to show you his deep squats a little bit later. He's very proud of those, right? So yes, he's very mobile for 81 years young. Whoa, I almost aged you. Can you believe it? All right, so he is on his back, supine. Now, maybe for these intake actions, you want to do all of your new clients' intake actions on their back. So this might be where you would start. So the first thing you want to do is just look at how they're lying here naturally. What's the flexion of the knees? He has great flexion of his knees, right? You may need to have the feet out a little bit further, but not you. Yes. And from here, he's going to, again, do that dorsiflexion of the feet, meaning drawing the toes towards the knees, and then putting the feet back down on the floor. So now he has the feedback of the floor behind his back and underneath his feet on his back, and you can, again, get a good gauge of how well he's dorsiflexing at his ankles. He has great dorsiflexion, so he's doing very, very well. Simple, easy, but effective. Now, moving into quadruped or all fours. So Dad, you're going to turn over and you're going to place your hands underneath your shoulders and your hips above your knees. Now, you can do loads of things in this position, but remember your client or your class is now down on their knees. You can work shoulder stability or mobility here. It's just a good place to start to look at things. And I want him to just try and see how he's tucking his toes under, right? We need to do this as a precursor to what? Many planking exercises, loads of different things. And this is challenging for a lot of people that have arthritis in their toes and issues in their toes, but he's doing very well here. You can see his Achilles tendon is nice and lengthened. You can see a nice good dorsiflexion at the ankle here. So this is a great way to evaluate the dorsiflexion of the ankle or the foot here and what's happening with the tibialis anterior in a different body position. Great, nice job, Dad. All right, you can go ahead and take a break for me, please. Yeah. So we're moving on. We're still in the intake strategy section, but now we want to move on to a different area of the body. I mentioned before that this is backed by a lot of research. The tibialis anterior, we talked about the importance of that. Now I want to move on to the importance of the quadratus lumborum. So the quadratus lumborum, and don't worry, there's not a spelling bee at the end of this. It's not in your quiz if you choose to get your CEC, so you don't have to spell it, is affectionately known shortly as the QL. And this is basically our deep stabilizer muscle of the core. It's hard to see and it's really hard to feel inside the body, but it's a very necessary area of the body to keep strong, especially in our active aging population, again, for fall prevention and reaction time, because that's really what it's all about, not only for activities of daily life, but if they're still playing tennis and all of those types of things. So you want to do an intake action which simply evaluates the strength of their quadratus lumborum. And we're going to do the quadruped tail wag, we're going to do sideline bananas, and we're going to do a standing hip lift. So we're going to start back down on the floor and come back up to the standing position. So Dad, I'm going to invite you back out. And again, use the strategy you'd like to come back down onto all fours, meaning your hands are down and your hips are above your knees. Great, I'll come down with you. And the first one we're going to talk about is the tail wag. So stay down on your knee and bring this heel towards your butt. No, other one. There, so that everyone can see you and your fabulousness. Imagine that kneecap is a pivot and you're going to take this leg and wag your tail out and look towards it. And then you're going to wag it across the body and look towards it the other direction. Keep doing that and I will talk. You're going to see the wrinkles hopefully increase on your client or your class's shirt as they look towards their foot, as it comes over to one side, and you're going to see it decrease as they look around the other direction. And it does. It looks like a tail, right? He's wagging his tail. For the sake of time, we're not doing the other side, but of course you'd want to look at the other side because again, we have a strong side and a smart side, and one side's going to look totally different than the other. Dad, I'm going to ask you to now turn on to your side facing forward, and I'll put the bolster back out for you. And again, just another way to evaluate what's happening on the side body. From here, Dad is very tall. He's 6'2", so he's going to extend his legs out nice and long and slightly in front of you, please. Now, you'll notice here that he has this arm for support on the floor, and that's completely fine. His head is slightly elevated, and I'm going to ask him to, go into a banana, which is lifting both legs up. Oh, you did it. Fantastic. And then lower and back down. And keep doing that, Dad, and I'll talk through it. So I'm calling this a sideline banana because he's basically in a banana shape. He's activating the side of his body as he lifts his legs up. This is challenging in and of itself. You may not even see if any lifting with your clients or classes. And what you might see, do it again, Dad, is this top hip starting to roll back. And if that happens, go ahead and rest. You'll notice that they're probably starting to use their hip flexor and they're kind of moving away from the lateral line. All right, great. So we're gonna go through the intake action number 3 and you're back up to standing. So use the strategy that works for you, Dad, and come back up to the standing position. Excellent. Come back here, stand next to me. I'll move this out of the way. And I learned this strategy from a good friend of mine, Lawrence Viscontini, and I want you to imagine that you have 2 hard-boiled eggs, put them in your hands, and I want you to bring your hard-boiled eggs to your shoulders. Now, you're not allowed to let your hard-boiled eggs fall. This is called standing hip lift. So you're gonna transfer your weight to one of your feet, and you're gonna try and lift your hip towards your hard-boiled egg without moving your shoulders. Good, and then try the other side. Yeah, and as his instructor, I'm looking and seeing what's going on. Maybe there's one side that's happening, a little bit more happening. I'm looking from the back, I'm looking from the side, I'm looking from the front, and I'm also starting to gauge what his balance is like, right? Because technically we're doing a little bit of single leg balance. You can go ahead and rest, and I'll bring you back out in a second. So, quadratus lumborum, right? We're back with that QL. Second of the 2 really critical pieces to keep strong with your active agers. Okay, those are the big 2. There's technically a big 3 and it's coming next, and we'll talk about the why behind the what with regard to lower body strength and power as well. Evaluation of the strength of the glute max. I'd like to actually add on to this and say just the whole posterior chain, including the hamstrings as well. This is a forgotten about area. I talk about this a lot in my workshops, that we're perpetually moving forward in life, and we kind of tend to forget about what's going on back there unless we're trying on a new cute pair of jeans. And so it's important to really remember that we have stuff happening back here and we need to keep it strong. The why behind the what with regard to that is we need to be able to get up and get down. Sit on a toilet. We need to be able to squat in some capacity. Now, remember, we're in the independent exerciser category, so if you're still training squats and lunges with your clients and classes, that's fantastic. That's not necessarily available to everyone, and or if you're like me and you have clients that have had hip replacements, knee replacements, and they're really atrophied on the back of the legs and with the glutes, there's a great way to evaluate this in the supine position. So Dad, come on back out. And we're bringing the bolster back into the equation. You're going to be on your back. Supine, right? Head is going to be on that bolster. So we're back into that on your back supine position here. Now, his feet are about hip distance apart and they're parallel, meaning north-south. They're not east-west, right? So you're trying to look for that. If there's eversion or inversion, you can address that as well. Many, many ways to bridge. We're going to explore an articulated bridge, and we're going to explore a neutral bridge. So he's going to roll up through his spine and find a bridge on the shoulders. You can do some tactile cueing here with your clients to see if the hamstrings are activated. Carry on, Dad. Just keep rolling up and rolling down. This type of a bridge also involves spinal mobility. This may not be available for all of your clients, and that's fine. So if it's not, you could simply do a neutral bridge. So come all the way back down, Dad, and pause for just a moment. Neutral bridging. I'm a little bit of a foodie, you'll learn about me, and I like to cue with food. So what I want you to think about, Dad, is you have a piece of bread on the front of your body, you have a piece of bread on the back of your body, and you're just going to lift your pelvis straight up without mobilizing the spine. And then you're gonna lower it back down. So he's still getting recruitment of the hamstrings, recruitment of the glute max, so lift up. He's driving down through those heels, and he's doing what we call a neutral bridge. The kind of, best one, not best, I would say, if you can move and progress your clients in the intake category already to a unilateral bridge, you definitely want to do that. So stay down for me, Dad. And the rationale behind that is you can really start to get a gauge of any compensatory patterns or any areas of atrophy that are happening throughout the body. So, Dad, what I'd like for you to do is you're going to keep one foot down on the floor and lift your other leg into tabletop. Yes. Now, he has one leg, one contact point, up off the floor, one contact point on the floor, and he's going to bridge as he was before, and I, as his instructor, am going to come and take a look at what's happening at the hips. So you're going to lift up, good, and lower down. Keep doing that on this side for a few more repetitions, and this is my time to see what's happening in the hips. Is one hip dropping? Is he even able to do this? Now he's strong, so you can see he's getting a good range of motion. This may not be available to all of your clients or your classes, and that's why if you can do it, great, but if not, keep them at the neutral bridge or the articulated bridge to get them started. Good, go ahead and put that foot down for me and take a break. All right, so stay right out here with me, Dad. I'm gonna have us both come up to the standing position, and we are gonna start to talk about balance, right? So we are working as far as the ability to balance is concerned in the standing position. Now this gets a little bit interesting because you're gonna see things illuminate here quite quickly. The simplest thing that you can do is a standing single leg balance. Now you saw my dad doing some of this earlier, and we're gonna focus on it a little bit more now. So simply all I want you to do, you can have your hands up, Dad, hands down, is transfer your weight to one leg and lift the opposite leg up and notice what's happening and try and stay there. And he's not gonna try and be perfect, even though he is. Right? Remember, balance can change from moment to moment and minute to minute and second to second. Switch your legs for me, please. Good. Oh, you're going to try and hold on to me, are you? Good. And I, as his instructor, am looking to see, again, which side is his strong side, which side is his smart side, an area that might be compensating, maybe, again, from a surgery or from just general life, and see where we maybe need to go. Now, if you'd like to automatically add a challenge because your client is a rock star and they're doing great, let's add in that visual affect right away. So you can do this in a myriad of different ways, but I'm just going to give you a simple strategy of dimming your eyes. So Dad, I want you to dim your eyes, don't cheat. And again, you can do that same standing single leg balance and see what happens with him dimming his eyes. So this way, yeah, good, try the other side. This way, you get an opportunity to take a look at your active ager or your class. You can do this in a class setting and see what's happening when they change their visual field. Great job. Go ahead and have a seat, Dad. I'll bring you back out in a moment. So as a reminder, you don't need to add in the visual affect at that point in time. Maybe it's already challenging for them to do that single leg balance, and that's okay. You can add as much or you can pull back as much. That's the whole point of this, is to give you simple foundational pieces, intake actions that you can build on in a class setting, whatever that setting is for you, to create some exercise protocol, if that makes sense. Which is where we're moving into next. So let's talk about exercise protocol for the active ager. I've pulled together these intake actions so that you can use some of these intake actions again in your exercise protocol and add on to them. That's simply the point, is to not reinvent the wheel, but use some of these strategies and make them more challenging if you can, or bring them back down if you need to. We're going to go through multiple body positions here. We've talked a lot about neuroplasticity. Some of these body positions are harder than others. Some of them are easier than others. My general recommendation is to start to involve a little neuroplasticity when you're in an easier body position, maybe a body position or an exercise or game that somebody has already mastered a little bit, and then you want to challenge their brain. Your workout protocol should also contain balance strategies at times. And as I mentioned earlier, balance declines at the age of 30, and you want to try and train it in multiple body positions, not always just standing. And you will see that when we get into a variety of positions here with the exercise or the game protocol. You also want to focus, as I mentioned, on strengthening the lower body. We're only going to focus on that by way of doing some more bridging strategies, but if you're still able to squat or to lunge or to deadlift with your clients or classes, that's great. Even knee bends are appropriate here. So just know that I'm speaking to you from the perspective of, I don't know all of your clients or your classes, so do what works best for them in your setting or your facility. All right, so some sample exercises here. We're going to start in the standing position. So we're going to begin with inline gait walking, then we'll move to the star, and then we'll take it into the marching. So Dad, welcome back out, and I'm going to have you step over onto this side of the mat. Now, he's never had to do a field sobriety test. Don't worry, my friends. But we're going to begin with inline gait walking. Now here's the deal. Don't start yet, Dad. You can see that we have a mat, and that's what he's going to use as his guidelines. If you don't have a mat, that's fine. Maybe you have a seam on the carpet in your facility, or a seam somewhere in your studio, or you have a BOSU balance trainer and you want them to walk around that. Use what you have. For the sake of this, we're going to use the mat. Now remember, Dad, there's no judgment. You can use whatever strategy with your arms. I just want you to start and do some inline gait walking. And I, as your instructor, start to try and see what's going on, again, with no judgment, right? Thanks. In life, it is progress, not perfection, and this rings true all the way through our active aging population. Good. Come one more time this way, one more time back. He thought he was done, but he's not. I'm going to see if he can improve a little bit so I can watch. Maybe your new client is a little nervous. You never know. So you want to give them a few times to see what's going on. And also you want to see where their eyes are. Are they looking down too much? Can they lift their eye gaze up a little higher if they're doing a great job? Perfect. So now, are you ready, Dad?
Yes.
We're going to go into star. But before we do it, let's talk about the shoulder girdle. I don't have 16 hours with you. I wish that I did, but the shoulder girdle is a very complex area of the body. This whole area of the body is a floating area, and it really doesn't attach in very many locations, but we need it for activities of daily life. But with that said, you're going to have clients or classes that have shoulder issues. Maybe lifting their arms above their head cannot happen, and in that case, you'd want to limit them to where they can go with their range of motion. Now, my dad's got good unloaded shoulder mobility, so we're going to have him lift his arms over his head in a capital Y position, not the MCA, just a Y. Great. Now you're going to transfer your weight over to one foot and you're going to tip over and make a star position. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is your star. Go to the other side, and I, as his instructor, am looking at his balance. I'm looking at what's happening on his lateral line, his quadratus lumborum, his lateral stability. Good, and give that a rest. You did awesome.
What a star.
You were a star. And then finally, we're just going to take this into some standing marching, which is a great warm-up exercise if you're a group fitness teacher, or even if you're just giving your clients a break in a circuit class. So hands come out into a genie position, and you're just going to start to march. So you're just bringing those knees up as comfortably high as you can. And as my dad's doing this, you can see what you're doing. Some of these strategies seem very simple because we do them and teach them every single day. But he's going into a single leg balance, which is awesome, right? We forget about how important this is. Great job. Okay, we're going to move on, but you can have a seat for just a second. All right, so as I mentioned, several body positions. We already did that in the intake action. Not as critical to have all the body positions in that per se. You can choose one and run through it. But we did some standing strategies. Now we're going to move back into quadruped or all fours. I'm going to hopefully get this done in under 2 minutes of time, right? But these are just sample exercises so that we don't keep Dad down on his knees for too terribly long. Quadruped, we're going to be taking a look at a balance strategy with balanced bird dog, a very common opposite arm, opposite leg reach exercise or game. We're going to reevaluate tail wag, and then we're going to add on to tail wag with the windshield wiper, because as a reminder, some of these intake actions, if not all of them, can be coupled with your exercise protocol. All right, Dad, you ready? So come on back out. You're going into your quadruped position. So you're down on your knees. Yes, and did I remind you that he's 81 years young and he gets up and gets down like he's 21 years old. From here, you're again looking for good alignment, good relationships, if you will, from your shoulders to your wrists. Okay, all of the things that we all learn in our trainings, all you're looking for here. Hips to knee, good relationship there. Then we're going to start to pour in some challenges. So to get my dad started, I'm just going to have you lift your arm and reach it forward. And I'm looking at the body to see if anything shifts. Good. Switch to the other side. Great. So he's looking pretty awesome. So I'm thinking, great. So we can move on to this. So now you're going to reach one arm forward and your opposite leg goes back behind you. And this is where you might start to see something happening. Go ahead and switch, Dad. So I, as the instructor, am starting to really look to see which side, is maybe shifting and shaking a little bit. Maybe he's gone to Zumba class a little bit and he's starting to move his spine and his stability core is not as turned on. Good, give me one more. But generally, he's looking pretty awesome. And guess what? He's doing a balance strategy in the quadruped position. Now, we're going to add on to this, and you most certainly could just keep it at the tail wag if you wanted to. Bring your heel back up to your butt, stay on your knee, and start your tail wag again, Dad. So you're going to wag your tail out, and again, you're looking for the increase in wrinkles here, and then wag your tail over, and then stretching out the lateral line here. So you're getting connection, and then essentially some dynamic flexibility here as you're mobilizing the spine laterally. Good, and then go ahead and give that a rest, and then we take the tail wag up to a longer lever. So he's gonna leave the floor now, just with one leg, don't panic. You're gonna extend that leg back behind you, great, and then now he's gonna take that lever out to the side, and then bring it back home, and you're gonna notice what's happening with the hips here. Great, do it again, so extend that leg out, and open, and close, and come back down, good. Go ahead and take a rest for a moment. Dad, you can go and have a seat, and I'm going to talk about those protocols in a little bit more detail. So as I mentioned, I'm only having my dad do maybe 2 up to 5 repetitions here because I only have you in this course for about an hour. These are foundational moves that you most certainly can feel free to add on to. With the windshield wiper, you're activating the back of the hamstring, you're activating the back of the glute in a unilateral fashion. You're also getting some great stability with the leg that stays down on the floor, right? So you could start this at a foundational spot and then create a sequence associated with that. I hope that makes sense. And the same thing rings true with your balanced bird dog. If you wanted to add that into your windshield wiper and take the arm away, you certainly could. Okay, so we've moved on now to the next body position, which is side lying. We're going to go through 3 exercises or games here, and those are elevated clams to address some hip mobility. We're going back to that banana that you saw earlier, and then we're going to do some banana split balance, which is my dad's favorite, I think. Maybe not. Okay, Dad, come on back out. So remember, we're going on to the side. I'm going to bring your bolster back in. Your head goes up here at the top. Yeah. He's going to come down onto the mat. Yeah, perfect. Great, Dad. And this top arm here, top arm on his body rather, is just going to be down on the mat for support. His head is supported, totally out of the equation. Both knees are bent up towards you and the feet are stacked. This is great. So from here, a very familiar exercise for you, which you can absolutely do automatically, which is some beautiful hip mobility, which is just a clam. So lifting your top knee up, and down. Good. So we're looking at a little external rotation of the hip here. And again, things that you will see happen is this hip wants to start to roll back, and you want to try and keep that stacked a bit. And once your client or class is just rocking this, you want to move this into an elevated clam, activating a little bit more of that deep stabilizer, the QL, by lifting the feet up. Ooh, that's a lot more challenging, and keeping that clam going. So lifting and lowering. This is what we're calling an elevated clam, right? So now he has activation through here, and he's still doing that hip mobilization, which is fantastic. Of course, you'd want to do the other side. Now, extend the legs all the way out. Perfect. Move them a bit forward, Dad. Great. So remember, we're back into that banana shape. So you'll notice that, I'm going to say again, he's very tall. He's 6'2", so his lever length is quite long. The fact that he can really do this and do it well is a great success for him. So you're going to lift your legs up in your banana, good, and lower and back down, good. Trying not to strain the neck, trying not to use too much of this front arm, good, and do one more. Great, and lower. Now, he's performing that very well, so I now know as his instructor and his trainer that I want him to take this into a banana split. Are you ready? I'll buy him a banana split later, but he has to do the banana split on the floor first. So you're gonna banana the legs up, good, and this top leg comes up and come back down and lower the legs. Now, he makes this look like a pro, but this is actually a very challenging exercise for actually anyone at any age. Do one more, Dad. Lift, hit, come back down and lower. Now, third and final piece here is we're going to add the balance strategy. You'll notice that he has contact points. He has a contact point here, and he has a contact point here. I am going to ask him, once he gets into his banana split position, to take this contact point away. So come up, Dad, split, and then can you find your balance? Whoa, try it again. Lift up, banana split, reach to the ceiling, hold it, ooh, and give it a rest. Very nice. So that's banana split, and then adding a little bit of balance. And believe it or not, on the side body, that's very, very challenging, and you've just added another balance strategy in a different body position. How many body positions do we have? 6. How many do we need to train? 6. How many do we need to train in balance? 6. And so you don't need to do that within every class, but at least choose more than one if you can. Good. Supine, your favorite, Dad, so go ahead and lie onto your back. Great. So I'm going to stay right here and talk through this slide first. So we're moving on to the supine position, so on your back, and we're going to review some of the bridging variations as an intake action. As a reminder, some of these intake actions are already challenging for your classes or for your clients, so use those and then add on to them and progress them as you need to or as you can. We're going to then evaluate dorsiflexion while you're bridging, and maybe adding in a little plantar flexion and some brain work at the same time. And then we're going to take it into unilateral bridging with the windshield wiper bridging, okay? So as a reminder, in your intake actions, you just had the feet down on the floor, north-south. The chest is nice and open. Yep, the head is up here in my dad's case in a supported supine position. And you're going to begin to just lift the pelvis up into your bridge. Good, and then lower the pelvis back down. Good, and then start to do, now he's doing his articulated bridge, so he's rolling his spine. Do a few where you don't roll, where you just lift up, yeah, and then you lower. So this is his neutral bridging. Great. And then in this position now, I would like him to combine one of our intake actions with the dorsiflexion of the feet, so the toes draw to the knees, both toes, and another one of our intake actions by doing the bridge in this position. So he's going to push down through his heels and lift the pelvis up. And pushing down through those heels might get him a little bit of a deeper contact through the back of his legs. Okay, and some of the things I will do here, you keep doing that, Dad, while I talk through it, is even before we start to get to the unilateral stuff, is just starting to do a little bit of unweighting of the foot, or compressions into the floor, or a balance training product, if you will. Now, rest for a second. Gladly. And we're going to start to talk about how to change this a little bit for the brain. I would like for you to lift one heel off the floor, go up onto one set of toes, and rock back onto the other heel. So he's up on one side in plantar flexion, and he's dorsiflexing on this side. And he's going to do that same bridging movement. Lower back down, switch sides with your feet. Uh-oh, did you do it? Mm-hmm. And now he's going to begin to alternate back and forth between that dorsiflexion and that plantar flexion while he's doing the bridging. And you as your instructor get to look and see what's happening and notice if there's success happening or if there's not success happening, right? Good, do one more. Great, and go ahead and come down and give that a rest. Now, the piece de resistance in the bridging position for lower body strength and power, as I think I mentioned earlier, but I will reiterate, is unilateral bridging for this population, because you're getting from side to side an evaluation of what's happening, and you're getting strengthening on each side of the body individual to the other. So, windshield wiper bridging. Dad's going to keep one foot down on the mat, and one leg's going to go straight up to the ceiling. Yes, now he is going to lift up into a bridge position and take this leg out away from the body, bring it back, and lower back down. Oh, he just did 2 in a row. You could do that too. That would be a progression, right? Now try the other side. Things that we're looking for here. Again, what's happening through the hips? Is he able to even do this? And lower. Good. Keep going, but alternate your legs. Is the foot on one side on the contact point veering out or in? Is the leg veering out or in? Is he straining in other areas of his body? Think about what's happening here. Good. Go ahead and rest, Dad. This is a very compound movement pattern. I don't feel like we give bridging a lot of credit sometimes, because we do it in a lot of our classes and we're like, we're rock stars, we can all bridge like nobody's business. But this is a very compound movement. He's doing lower body strength and power. He's activating his stability core when he's lifting his core off the ground. And then he's challenging his core by moving that lever away from the midline of the body. These are all really, really critical things for the general population, yes, but especially the active aging population. So there's an example of some supine exercises or games with bridging variations, dorsiflexion bridging, and windshield wiper bridging. All right, how are you doing, Dad?
Still here.
You're still here, okay, good. Great, so we're gonna move on to the prone position, and this will get us all the way through prone, and so you're through being on your belly. So you're gonna turn on over. Dad's gonna place his forehead on this bolster. So again, he's in that supported position of his head for his cervical spine. Let's move this back just a little bit for you, Dad. Good, there you go. And his hands are gonna come out right kind of near the shoulders. Now, from here, we're gonna begin with, again, a gluteal activation strategy. In this body position, because he's on his belly, we're not gonna get as big of a range of motion, and that's okay. You could put them up higher on a balance training product or on an arc if you wanted to, underneath the pelvis. I'm gonna ask my dad to lift one leg up and see what's happening with his hamstrings and his gluteals on one side. Good, do the other side. And also noticing what's happening with his hip extension, because as that leg is lifting and the hamstring and the glute is activating on the back of the body, the hip flexor on the front of the body is starting to open as well. And let's be honest, in daily life, we get a lot of hip flexion and not a lot of hip extension. So this is a really nice way to get a bit of hip extension in a prone position. Great, Dad, that's plenty. Now, quiet the legs. And we're gonna move into the swan. Now, this is not the most comfortable position for anybody, but to keep this out of the lower back, I'd like for my dad to drop his tail a little bit, not necessarily grip the glutes. That's not the best cue. But I like to say slightly press the pubic bone towards the mat or the floor. That will get his low abdominals to activate into this area and support the low back as he then presses through his hands and begins to lift with his deep longitudinal system of the core body. Good, lower down. Keep doing a few of those, Dad. So the muscle focus here is really all of these back extensors and the upper middle back muscles. We call this the deep longitudinal system of the core. It's really great for upright posture. You can see he's doing a great job and that the head is really staying in line with the rest of the spine, which is what we're looking for here. Critical area of the body to train. I mentioned this at the top of the hour. You can do one more, Dad, and then rest, and I'll just keep talking for just a moment. I mentioned this at the top of the hour, and it's kind of, I try and make it funny when I'm talking specific to anatomy, but it's not a joke. We forget about the back of our bodies, and it's a really, really important area to train. The posterior chain is very important. So pulling protocol, upper body protocol, lower body protocol, postural protocol, core body protocol, the focuses in this area is really, really critical. And unfortunately, a lot of us these days, not just our active agers, are not activating our muscles back there because of modern day technology. So make sure that you think about that when you're working with your active agers. Now, we're going to move into a little bit of unilateral back extension and gluteal hamstring work. The bolster is going to go away for this, for swimming. And because my dad has a great range of motion through his shoulders, he's going to extend his arms out in front of you, or in front of him. Now, this might not be available to everyone. This is a great way to get unilateral back extension and focusing on the back sling of the body, the posterior sling. He's going to lift one arm and the opposite leg up. Yes. And then lower it back down. Then he's going to do the other side. And then now he's going to, when he comes down, lift the head, neck, and shoulders, or lift up with the head and do that again. One arm and the opposite leg, Dad. Great. And lower. And the other arm and the opposite leg. And I'm probably aging myself, but when I was a kid, there was this old toy. I don't know if it was made by Mattel or whoever made it, but none of us are made by Mattel. But his name was Scuba Steve. And he used to look like Scuba Steve in the pool, and he would do this swimming thing, right? So Dad's doing his best Scuba Steve. That's great. So there's an example of unilateral back extension, and you can go ahead and take a rest, Dad. So go ahead and come on all the way up and over, and you can take a break for just a moment. And I have a little bit of a surprise because we talked about neuroplasticity, but before we start to move on into some question and answers and to sort of progress and see what you guys have to say, or if there's anything that I can help you with, I want to just review what we've talked about. So we moved through all of the body positions here. The one that we did not talk specifically about in this course today was sitting, but sitting protocol is very important as well, whether it be seated on a chair or on a stability ball. But please use any of these protocols in your training, whether it be a class, whether it be a client, whether it be adding it into a circuit class and you want one of the stations to be back extension. Choose to use that swimming exercise or that swan exercise. And then also, we didn't do a ton of neuroplasticity, did we? We only started to memorize my cell phone number, which maybe you remember, maybe if you wrote it down, I'll hear from you later. You can text that number at any time, and I definitely will text you or call you back. So I'm going to invite my dad back out for one last thing on the spur of the moment. Stand next to me. Are you ready for your backflip?
No.
It's a joke. So all I want you to do is start marching, Dad. Now, my dad doesn't have a mic, so you're not going to be able to hear him, so don't worry about that, because if you guys are at home or if you're in a comfortable setting, I want you to do this with me as well. Remember we talked about the numbers part of the brain? I'm going to tell you a story, and I trick my clients all the time with this. So I mentioned to you that my business and my practice is in Laguna Beach, California. Come see me anytime and look at the beautiful Pacific Ocean. One of my favorite places to eat is Active Culture, and it's about 2 blocks down from my studio. And my favorite salad is the lemon hummus salad there. And Dad, what color is a lemon? Yellow. Yeah, it's yellow. Can you spell the word yellow?
Y-E-L-L-O-W.
Exactly. And if I was really mean, good, go ahead and take a rest. I would ask him to spell the word yellow backwards. I would tell him more stories. I would ask him to spell other words. I'd ask him to spell numbers. I'd say, hey, so, I bought 8 green Granny Smith apples, and instead of talking about the number 8, I'd have him spell it. So these are all neuroplasticity strategies that you can utilize in your training and with your clients, and just have fun with it. One of the things that I like to say to my clients is that they like to know about what's going on with me, and I like to know about what's going on with them. And this is a great way to kind of have some comfort and some confidence, and to just get to know what's happening with your clients that particular day. So you did an awesome job. Thank you so much.
Thank you, dear.
Appreciate having you. High five. You're a star. Thanks, Dad. You can go have a seat.
Thank you.
And so if you guys have any questions, as you know, you can stay in touch, and it's a joy and an honor to be here. Now, I want to say this again. This might be the 3rd time, maybe the 4th time that I'm saying this. Some of these protocols seem really simple. I'm guilty as charged. I like to teach to, the single leg burpee. I like to do a challenging protocol, but I oftentimes like to bring myself back into a term that I say, comfort creates confidence. And some of these foundational protocols are where we like to start with our active agers and really progress them where they can go. So with all of that said, I'm going to invite Jackie back on and see if we have any questions in real time that I can answer.
Yes, thank you. We do have a lot of great questions.
Okay.
Thank you so much, and thank you to your dad.
Thanks, Dad.
He definitely deserves that banana split.
He does.
And I believe he also has several hundred social media followers.
Oh, good. Yes.
So we have our own Firefighter Bob.
I love it. Yay. Hashtag Firefighter Bob.
That's right. So we do have a lot of questions coming in. If you are watching live right now, be sure to type in your question for Erika, and we'll take just 1 or 2 of those here. In the meantime, please have a look at your slide if you would like to continue to connect with Erika and ask her any questions maybe that you have that we don't have time to talk about today. She does have some great information that I'm sure she's willing to share, and we will also be doing a live Facebook chat.
Yes, and I'm happy to answer there too. And you guys see my email up on screen. That is my personal email, and I promise I will email you back. And I don't know how many of you are out there. I think we had a lot of you come to this and register, but please take advantage of that. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. My background is actually marketing and advertising, and what I say to everyone is that customer service is essential to me, and if you would like any questions answered that I don't get to here or on the Facebook page, please send them to me in an email.
Great. So one of the questions that has come up is regarding, number 1, how great your dad did, and the fact that he is, very mobile, right? He did a great job, and so a lot of our pros maybe have clients who have maybe a little bit less mobility.
Got it.
So what are some of maybe just 1 or 2 modifications that you could make from some of the things that we talked about today for those clients who maybe still fit into that independent exerciser category, but aren't quite as cool as your dad?
Great. So great question, by the way, and this is also a huge issue in my environment as well. So I use the tools that I have in my environment. So I happen to have, obviously, tables, chairs. I also have balance training products, anything that can help bring the floor closer to your client or your class. Do not be afraid to use it. So sometimes maybe bringing a BOSU balance trainer out, or a balance pad or pad that brings the floor closer to your clients can help them, whether it be hinging down to reach to the floor or placing their knees on the floor to where they don't have to go into a deeper lunge or a deeper squat, will help them immensely.
Great. So just as a reminder, we did talk about, just kind of the tip of the iceberg, right,
yes,
if you will, on some of the active ager information. But if you take a look at your slide, you do have a lot more options that ACE offers as far as continuing education. So we do have our functional aging specialist program. We have a couple of other 1-hour webinars and our senior fitness specialist course as well. So just a reminder, Erika is going to be fielding some live questions on our Facebook chat page. So make sure and check that out. That is live on our ACE Fitness Facebook page right now. So go there and type in your question for Erika. So just a reminder, you have been watching today for free. We appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to watch this via YouTube. If you would like to purchase for today's presentation and earn some CECs, you can do that using the ACE Fitness / past webinars link, and that will lead you to where you can purchase and get some CECs in your MyAce account. So the video that's playing on your slide right now will show you where these webinars live, and there's a lot more to choose from.
Great.
Also, we do have our next live webinar coming up next month, and that is new research on program design for weight loss, and that will be with Amy Ashmore. So make sure and tune in for that. There are a lot of ways also that you can continue to connect with ACE. Our Facebook page is one of them, as well as all the information that we provided for Erika's contact.
Absolutely.
As well. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. And thanks everyone for watching. It's an honor and a joy to be here, and keep moving.
Yes, let's go get people moving.
Absolutely. Right? Sounds great.
Thank you.